is the Rat Alert. Civil defense information will be broadcast at 6:40.
West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Y2K, how can we prepare?
Stop a few of their machines and radios. Throw them into darkness for a few hours.
We are fighting for our lives. My family must survive.
Oh, for 5 years. 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration.
Guys, Toolman Tim here. Welcome back to the workshop. This is episode 443, and this is going to be a little different one. As I sit here in Delinquent's Gully, up on the ridge, in the cabin, which has doubled in size since I've been here this week, I'm basically at the midpoint of my 2-month road trip, sitting in the cabin, listening to the rain come down, and we're 10 days removed from Self Reliance Festival. It was a great time, and probably the greatest experience that I had there was the honor of both introducing my wife and getting to sit down and listen to her share her story of adversity, overcoming, and building an empire out of chaos. I was asked by multiple people, are you going to release Becky's recording from Self Reliance Festival? And we originally just put it on a unlisted file on YouTube and shared it in the Telegram group. And there's reasons for that. If you read between the lines, you can probably figure out why we didn't really promote it. But she came and messaged me a couple days ago, and she's like, honey, put it in the podcast feed because I know some folks want to hear it. I know I want to share it. I hope you guys are touched by it like I am. It's a great message that she shares, but more than anything, she is brave to share the story. So with that, guys, I hope you enjoy building an empire out of chaos as you get to hear the first episode of the Workshop podcast featuring entirely somebody other than me. Enjoy, guys.
Hey, I came from a really crappy household. My parents didn't do this for me. They didn't do this for me. Maybe you didn't get that pony on your 16th birthday, but it is a little harsh to hear sometimes, but I think some women need to hear it, and men too, but we do need to hear it. And just so everyone knows, yes, I do run daycares and I work with little kids, but I'm not mean with them, I promise. So I'm not harsh like this with them. But for the majority of my life, I used my past as a crutch. If anyone knew me growing up, they would not have faulted me for not having a future. I had a very, very difficult childhood. My parents had no money. My father was a continuous recipient of workers' compensation. He was on that since I was 5 years old. My mom was on a disability pension. She never worked my entire childhood. All she would do is just basically go to bingo and sit at home. They were paid once a month. We had very, very frequent visits to food banks, constant assistance with helping to pay rent, not paying the rent. We moved around a lot. It was simple because they didn't want to pay the rent, or they would just think they could move to escape the rent. No, they weren't junkies. They weren't alcoholics. It was probably it was one of those lives where they just are at the point where they were just living, they just didn't care. I was probably the only 9-year-old in my class that could pry open a cable box and get free cable, because my dad would have me out there at 3 o'clock in the morning holding a flashlight showing me how to do it, because they wouldn't pay the bill, so why pay it when you can get it for free? So he also was very, very educational with how to get free meals from fast food places. So it was like, hey, let's go to McDonald's. He would call from a payphone, get us a free McDonald's meal because they'd say he messed up his order, right? Because they never had the money to buy it. So I know how to get a free meal from a fast food place if anybody's interested. I know what it's like to go into stores, see your parents' names on the walls for theft or bad checks. To put it in perspective, by the time I met my husband, Tim, in 2005, I had moved 47 times. And that is basically, it was a thing that moved on with me after I moved out that I just kept going because I was taught that instead of paying the bills, it was easier just to move and run from them. So my parents were never prepared. They never had a plan. They never seemed to even try to figure out how to have a better lifestyle. It was dealing with mental, emotional, and financial, sometimes physical abuse from my father. But I'm not here to make excuses for him. And I'm not here, all I could say is that he could have done better. My mother could have done better. She could have been more present. There's lots of woe is me stories I could fill you guys in on, but I don't think there's enough time to even touch that. So I decided when I was 17, I moved out. I had had enough. So I figured, hey, I'll move out. I can do better than you guys. If not, I can be equal with you. And can anybody guess what happens to a 17-year-old girl when they move out and they have no parental supervision? Yeah, I ended up pregnant. So, because that makes it better, right? I graduated high school, secretly 5 months pregnant, because I went to a Catholic high school, and if they had found out, they would have expelled me. So I did finish. My son, he was born November 1997. And of course, that was the start of my life. I thought, hey, this is cool. I can stay home, hang out with my kid, collect a welfare check. They pay my rent. I get free money. Hey, my parents taught me food banks are awesome. We can go to the food bank whenever we need anything. Basically, holding out my hand, taking all the handouts I could get. I thought my life was made. And then, of course, I met someone, interested in a single mom on welfare, living in low-income housing. And I was like, hey, well, why not? He's interested, nice-looking guy. I'll give him a chance. Anyone guess what happens? Yeah, pregnant again, 19. So my oldest daughter was born July 99. Of course, he took off. Why would he stick around, right? Because that's just the type of people that I was attracting, I guess. So now I'm a single mom on welfare, 2 kids. And I'm what most people would say, and I say to myself too, I'm a hard learner. And Mr. Smooth came back around again. And I'm like, oh, geez, he's coming back. Maybe we can make it work. Doing really good, everything. Yep, ended up pregnant again. So 3rd daughter born July 2021. He stuck around this time though. I was finally working, making money. I went back to work when my daughter was 6 weeks old. That's only because I realized that he wasn't going to work, so we had to have money of some sort. I worked at a call center for AT&T. Us up in Canada, we manage all your guys' cell phone calls up there, and we get all you rude Americans that call and swear and yell at us on the phone all the time. Just so you know, so if you're ever calling your provider, it's probably a Canadian. Just be nice. So I had to leave the call center after 9/11. I'm not going to touch too much on that, but it deterred me from ever having to work in a call center again. It was devastating and it was heartbreaking, and it was just one of those things that I just couldn't go back to. So I was home more. I ended up on unemployment. And then I realized that being home more exposed me to, again, the physical, emotional, mental abuse. So I was basically living with my father again. I realized that when my youngest daughter was 2, I decided I'd had enough. I packed up, moved out in the middle of the night, got my own place. I was working 2 jobs, 8 a.m. till 4:30 p.m. and then 6 p.m. till midnight while being a single mom with 3 kids. I had a house, I had a car. I was paying all my bills, but of course, I was still living in the same city, so that didn't stop the abuse or harassment. I got a restraining order, but what good's a piece of paper at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're beating down your door and you have 3 little kids in the house and you have to wait for the police to come, throw the paper at them? It does nothing. So I packed up in the middle of the night, moved 3 provinces away, which is the equivalent to 3 states. I ended up moving to Nova Scotia, and of course my parents tagged along with me because they were more than happy to have me pay them to live with them, because that's basically what they could get out of me. But I had three small kids. I didn't really have a choice. I started working again full time. I was beaten down, no self-esteem at this point. Swore off all men. I wanted nothing more to do with them. I was taking care of my kids, giving all my money to my parents because I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. I was making $9.85 an hour full time at Walmart. I wasn't happy. I was just living. My best friends were my sister and my brother, who were younger than me. They were living with us as well. My parents draining their bank accounts as well. After about 6 weeks, my sister convinced me to go out, and and that was the night that I met Tim. And I'd like to say the rest is history, but I'd be lying. And any of you have ever heard Tim's speeches, nothing ever got easier for us. We were just basically in the same shit show together. We struggled hard. We both worked low-paying jobs. He would work days, I would work nights, because we couldn't afford to pay a babysitter. There was times that our power bill was higher than our rent, and we struggled bad. And we did our best. We never wanted the kids to see us struggle. I swore off ever going to a food bank again. I refused. I would never, ever expose my kids to that. I didn't want them to think that was normal, because it is there if you need it, but it's not a normal occurrence to have to use it as a grocery store when it is for people who need it. And I didn't want them to think that. We moved across the country, moved back. We got roped into a rent-to-own situation, which both of us, we didn't make enough money to get a bank or a mortgage from the bank. So we were like, hey, this is awesome. You know, we can get a house, we can pay for it, own it at the end. Yeah, the house was not safe for the kids. The roof was leaking, it had black mold. He was charging us too much. And it wasn't big enough. So thankfully we were able to walk away from that, and we weren't out any money except for the issues that we had dealing with him afterwards. Then we managed to scrounge up enough money. I think it's the one gift that my father ever gave me. In 2011, my father was diagnosed with cancer. They gave him 6 months to live. He had brain, spine, liver cancer. That's the first thing he's ever given me. Was when he passed away, I was given a little bit of life insurance that gave us a down payment on a house. 130 years old, 7 bedrooms, beautiful house, right on the water in Nova Scotia. It had room for each of the kids. We had tons of room, but it was falling down around us. It needed a new roof, new water pump, new oil tank, new septic. That was the best one. New windows, and the final straw was it needed a new furnace. So we couldn't afford any of that. So we packed up. We moved across the country again. Tim followed first. I was by myself with the 5 kids for 6 months, and then I flew out the 2 older ones, and then I drove across country with the 3 younger kids in tow. We settled in a small town, Provost, that my sister and my brother-in-law were living in. Tim had a really good job working in the oil, and I eventually found a job working for oil too, and it was going really good. We were able to pay our bills, things were getting paid. We even booked our first vacation that we'd ever had to go to Vegas. And then, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of, Tim mentioned about my Cooper curse, and if anybody knows, Cooper's my maiden name. Growing up, it was always embedded in our brains that every time something it's because we're a Cooper, and that was my dad's fallback. We have to move again. I didn't pay the rent. Oh, it's because I'm a Cooper. So, and I was like, well, when you're a kid, you're like, oh man, that's probably why. But then you realize, well, like, no, it's because you didn't pay the rent. That's why we have to move. It has nothing to do with your last name. So when the oil crashed, I was 100% convinced, even though it was worldwide, everybody was affected because my Cooper curse, and it was all my fault. And I was 100% convinced of this. And then they called me in the day before our Vegas trip and were nice enough to let me know that I was laid off. And we were flying out the next morning. So it kind of ruined our vacation, but we didn't let it, we had a great time. It was our first vacation that we had ever had. That was more than an hour away from our home. And when we came back, Tim was already laid off at this point. He started working at the local hardware store, again, because that's all he ever worked at. And I ended up getting a really good job at the hospital in the laundry department, which I know it sounds like a literal crappy job, because it was, but I loved it. I got to do my own thing. I got to handle all the dirt. I was my own boss, basically, in the basement. Nobody ever bothered me. But then I ended up, there's that little Cooper curse again. Because of that curse, I got injured, just so everyone knows. It's the Cooper curse that hurt me. And I was convinced of that. They threw everything at me: surgery, MRIs, physiotherapy, injections, whatever they could do. But regardless, my career at the hospital was done. They wouldn't let me come back to work. So at that point, I realized I was done working for other people. I was tired of them controlling my life, done with them telling me when and where I had to be, done with them telling me I couldn't have a day with my kids, telling me that I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't have the weekend off with my kids, tired of them telling me that I have to jump through their hoops. And it just wasn't, and anything I ever did, it was never good enough. You can't make these people happy. Doesn't matter where you work. It's all bureaucratic, and it's all shit rolls downhill. And then you deal with the big feeling, low-paid managers with a chip on their shoulders that make 50 cents more an hour than you do, but they're sitting there telling you how you're not good at your job, how much you suck. And my favorite one is like, well, we'd probably give you more shifts if you smile more. We'd probably give you more shifts if you would pick up more shifts. And the best one, when I was younger and single, I'd probably give you really good shifts. How about you just go out to dinner with me? How about you just have a drink with me? Those are the best ones. And you just can't escape that. I find it's almost like if you work in the box stores, it's like they're cardboard cut-ups. All the managers the exact same. They must go to like some sort of college that teaches them this. And then that's exactly right. And for some reason, it changed chemical balance in my brain, allowed me to start thinking more clearly and hyper-focus on what I want. And I don't know if anybody else suffers it, but hyper-focus is a word that us ADHDers love to use. It's a great word. I love it. I had no clue what I was going to do. I put all my energy into helping Tim build his business so that we could get it up from there. Took on all kinds of jobs: cooking, house cleaning, rental properties, bank cleanups, everything we could think of. When my sister, who's 5 years younger than me, had her youngest son, Adam, she realized she didn't want to go back to the hospital either. And we came up with the option. It's like, well, why don't we offer babysitting? And why stop there? Her mother-in-law had a church with a basement, and we can babysit in the basement. But I'm one of those ones that can't just settle. And again, there's that hyper-focus. Why don't we get a license? It's not impossible. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of patience, and of course, the wonderful hoop jumping that I love doing, but it's all for government. So at the end, you do all the hoop jumping, but it's for you in the end. And we didn't have a lot of money. And before you say, well, I'm out, she said money. It's not what I hold it, like, we didn't have much money, but remember, women have a way to budget. I'm not saying men don't, but not like women. Women can budget with very small resources. And I think that's something that we're born with, and it's something that women have. My sister and I were experts. We hit yard sales. We took donations. We bought cheap flooring, which I think was 70 cents a square foot. We managed to put together an entire daycare. We didn't have staff. It was just my family, myself, Amy, and of course, before any of you guys, yeah, my mother, unfortunately. Right. My 19-year-old daughter, Grace, she was the one daughter that wanted to work in childcare. We opened the daycare, middle of COVID, and yes, with one kid. And yeah, you heard it was just one kid. And it wasn't my nephew. So it was actually an outsider kid. But it didn't discourage us because it was ours. We woke up at 7 in the morning. We closed at 6 at night. And even after we closed for a month because we had a COVID outbreak, we still stuck it. We didn't give up. After 10 months, we retired. We fought a good fight, but it just didn't seem to be growing. We did have more than one kid by then, but it still wasn't enough to justify opening every day. It was defeating, and as much as I want to admit it, that Cooper curse was coming back again. But only time it was doubled because Amy was involved with it too. So now there was 2 Coopers involved with this, and my mother. So now we had 3 Coopers. So yeah, there was no beating this curse. But I refused to let it win. I think it defeated my sister a little bit. She's not as confident as I am. She's more introverted. But I refused. And I was not going to end up with like my parents. I wasn't going to sit at home. I wasn't going to tell the kids that they couldn't have things. I wasn't going to tell them that they had to wait to the end of the month or not at all. I refused to tell them that we couldn't go places, we couldn't do things. Nothing worse than telling your kids they can't participate in a school sport because you can't afford the $20. And I wasn't going to be that parent who writes a bad check, let the kids go, and then worry about bouncing it afterwards. We fought through, and then in January of 2022, we got more kids. Grants started back up after COVID, which we were very, very thankful for. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to keep our heads above the water. And we were just kind of bobbing on the surface, but I take that as a win in my book. Then in February of 2023, we were able to hire our first non-family employee. This was the greatest, but the scariest feeling in the world. Because once you pass that threshold, there's no going back. It was LFTN 2023. Tim and I were driving to Tennessee. I was sleeping because that's basically what I do while he's driving. And I think I startled him because I woke up out of a dead sleep. And I don't even know if I yelled it, but I think it was quite loud. And I was like, well, why can't I open a daycare in another town? They had grants for operators to expand because the childcare crisis is real in Alberta. There is not enough affordable spaces for parents who need to work. There's that hyperfixation coming into my brain. I wanted to be in Tennessee in the worst way, but I just couldn't wait to get home. I wanted to look at buildings. I wanted to start applying for grants. And you will always get those people who think you're crazy. And you just need to shrug them off and laugh. But you can't let these people win. I have all these comments that I wrote down here. I'm going to read them. These are comments I got from not random people. These are people who are close to me. Family, friends. Wow, you're nuts. Why would you want to do that? Are you sure you want to do this? Go slow. You don't want to take on too much. That's a lot of work. My response to all of these, yeah, well, no shit. Of course I'm nuts. A good nut. Yes. Why wouldn't I want to do this? Why would I go slow? Things never get done if you take your time. And yes, it is a lot of work. Anything you want in life is a lot of work. These are the types of people that you don't need in your life. And I'm realizing that more and more every day. This is what I refer to as toxic. These responses are from people who do nothing, who live boring, mediocre lives, and never do anything, but they always have opinions and they never run out of opinions. That is one thing they will never run out of. Ignore these people. They're not worth listening to. Don't let them live rent-free in your brain. There will be the ones that will be coming to look for the jobs, asking you for the money, but there will be also the ones weighing you down if you let them. So this adventure was a lot more work than I anticipated. But failure isn't an option, and no is a word I hate using in my vocabulary. We found a realtor. His name was Chris. What a great and helpful guy. Like, he was wonderful. I think, though, when he first met us, I think he thought we were crazy and that we were random tire kickers. But he was so patient. He helped us through the whole process. We found a building. I thought we found the perfect building, but according to the city, there was too many business around it that put chemicals in the air, so we couldn't have a playground. But that was okay. Chris found us another building that was just as perfect. Needed some work. Had a fenced-in yard. It was on a quiet street, and we were willing to put money to the landlords to help with the renovations. We had the paperwork ready to be signed, and then all of a sudden the landlords decided, nah, we don't want to invest any money in your business. So we were back to square one. We found another building, which was just as perfect, right next to a dance studio. We had still needed some renos, but it was a newer building, so the flooring was nice, the painting was nice. Then we got hit with a huge inspection investment from the building inspector. It had to have a fire suppression unit installed. We kind of toyed with the idea, and we're like, okay, well, it's not going to be so bad. And then he said, no, you have to put it in every unit in the complex. So we were hit with a bill, $650,000. So the landlord wanted us to pay for it. And I don't know any better you, I'm not prepared to invest that kind of money in a building that I don't own. So we were back to square one yet again. So that's 3 buildings that we had gone through. Finally, October 2023, and I know you heard it before, but this building was perfect, I promise. The landlord was willing to work with us. He installed a fire alarm system, which we are forever grateful for. It was $67,000. We had little to no renovations, and he offered us an empty lot for very, very cheap rent that we could put up a fence and have a big playground. And we signed the lease. We got the keys. And now, side note, well, while we were going through all these buildings, I had an owner of another daycare that approached me, told me she wanted to retire, and she offered me her daycare for a small amount. I believe it was $15,000, and she was already established. So even though I was going 1,000 different ways, and like I said before, no is not in my vocabulary, I took it. Now this building was a very, very easier process. We didn't have to start from scratch. We had full staff, every spot was full, and I had a huge wait list. I didn't know what kind of wait list until I got into it, and then I realized there was 110 kids on the wait list. So that's what we call Busy Bees South. I've had possession of that one since January, and then that building basically runs itself. I have a great director. Her name is Ritu. I don't ever have to go there, and she assures me every day, you don't need to be here. Everything is fine. I've got it under control. And the kids are happy, parents are happy, and I couldn't ask for a better center. As of April 2nd, we officially opened Busy Bees North. And yes, I was here in Tennessee when it opened. I'm still kind of pissed about it. But nonetheless, it was opened. I have great staff that is handling everything beautifully, and they know what they're doing. I have full confidence in all of them. I have a HR manager that I hired recently. Her name is Tessa. She's the best person ever I could find besides my sister to help me in this crazy ride. I think she's just as crazy as I am. She never thinks my ideas are weird. Or out of reach. She basically runs the whole show for me now. Amy's my sister, is holding down our fort in Provost, which would be Busy Bees Provost, along with Grace, our 22-year-old daughter. We're all in our last year of college because I didn't have enough on my plate. So I'm in my second year of college, finishing up my level 3 diploma for director of a childcare. And I will say in this process, there's one thing you got to remember. You need to build relationships, not only with people that support and have confidence in you. But there's a time in your life when you realize who you need in your life and who you don't. Those that are riding your coattails, and then there's those that are willing to work beside and with you. You're going to have good days, bad days, but those are the people that you want around you that if you fall, they're going to pick you up and help brush the dirt off. This is the most important piece of advice I can give, and if that's all you take from this presentation, it's a bonus for me, because especially for women and men, I want to include them, you don't need these people that aren't going to help you. We have 3 centers. Even saying that out loud, it sounds weird. I've recently been dealing with, and I've talked to Tim on a regular basis with this, I have that pesky little imposter syndrome. It is hard to fathom. It's hard to wrap my head around. But I'm told it's very normal. But it's a daily struggle. We have 32 employees. I have to hire 10 more. We have 200 children. And we have a wait list with more than 200 children on it. It all sounds surreal. But Tim and I, the other night we were talking, as of our fiscal year, at the end of this fiscal year, we will have an annual income of $2.3 million. And we are not stopping anytime soon. We are going to expand our daycare to the next level. And then we are going to try to go to a bigger city. And we'll see how ramped up I am to travel for that. Because I'm not getting any younger, unfortunately. But so that's where we are. That's my life. I wouldn't change it for anything, and I'm not stopping anytime soon.
Am I on? There we go.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook.
Yes.
So, if you guys have any questions from the boss babe herself, all I can say, it was an absolute damn honor to sit here and get to listen to you for a change, baby doll.
Yes.
I say it all the time, but I'm so friggin' proud of you. It's unbelievable. You just, yeah, it's amazing. I love you. So, if anybody's got questions, anything like that, oh, you got one, or you just got? Oh, okay. Yeah. How about the woman aspect of it? I know it's hard to be in a man's game sometimes, but was there anything in there that you've learned along the way?
I find when you're running the show, being a woman, you don't get the respect from contractors, the trades that a man would get. And it is very difficult, and dealing with them sometimes, like, they'll instantly give you attitude, or they'll talk to you like you're an idiot. They act like you don't know what you're doing. And I find those ones are probably the hardest ones to deal with. But running daycares from a woman's aspect of that portion, it's a lot easier than what it would be for a man. My director at Busy Bees North is a male, Brandon, wonderful guy. He still gets that, oh, well, you're a man, you're working with my kids. How's that different than a woman, right? And we try not to have that discrimination in the centers.
What about, here's the one that I know you didn't touch on a lot, but it's probably your absolute superpower. And I don't know if I'd call it stubbornness or persistence, but I'm not kidding, folks, when I say that everything we have is due to her stubbornness and persistence in kicking me. So can you talk a little bit about what that means, persistence or stubbornness, and how you need it in order to succeed in business?
Well, you can't take no. There's no such thing as no. When you're dealing with anything, there's always a workaround. So if someone says, hey, you can't do that, instead of saying, oh, okay, I can't. No, you'd be like, you come back at them and be like, well, then what can I do? What can we do to make this work? What can we fix to make this work? Because when we were doing the one daycare, we had the issue with the playground. Right. And they're like, well, you can't have this playground in this area. And instead of saying, okay, we'll find something else, but what can I do to have this playground here? And then when you put them on the spot like that, they kind of come up with solutions to help you with it to the point where it works. And if you get the solutions from government employees, you know it's going to pass because they're the ones giving you the solutions, and they're not going to give you anything that they have to backpedal on. So and the big one is remembering everything that you are told from government employees. So and I don't want to be mean about it, but you want to, because there are some times where you have to throw that back in their faces. No, you told me this. Well, I don't remember telling you this. And I'm like, well, you told me it, I have it written down. And then they kind of, and then they backpedal, and then you get what you need.
You ever record your conversations in case they don't believe you're writing?
You are allowed to record your conversations in Alberta as long as one party knows.
And that party can be the person who
Yep.
recorded.
Yeah, and that party can be the one that is recording.
I'll be turning my recorder app on.
Yeah, but I found any type of government employee that we were dealing with, I always made sure I had one other person with me. So basically, then it'd be 2 against 1.
And an email. You do a lot through
I do everything through email, because it is a huge, huge satisfaction getting an email from a government employee telling you this is not what I said, and then you forwarding their email to them, and you'd be like, yes, you did, and then watching them backpedal on the emails. It's a great feeling. It really is.
So with business, cool, thank you. I needed this. Hi, thanks. But with business, everybody has that one thing that they're inherently really good at, or the few things that they're inherently good at. And on the other side of the coin, that same business owner will have things that they're terrible at. As an example, for me, it would be delivery and marketing and sales. Like, I shine like no other, but the back end stuff, paperwork, organization, stuff like that, terrible. So what I'd like to know is, where is it that you feel is super easy for you? And conversely, what is it that you find you struggled with that you gave it to somebody else, or how did you deal with the hard part?
I find I'm really good at finding money. So I'm good at finding grants. I'm good at applying for grants. Our recent grant that we just got was $440,000. I'm very, very good at finding those. I'm good at administrative. When it comes to, and that's why I hired Tessa. I'm not good at dealing with whiny employees. So I do try, but I'm at the point in my life where I'm not going to coddle you. Like, I'm sorry you're having period cramps. Suck it up, right? Like, I'm sorry if you've got a headache. Suck it up, right? But Tessa handles all that for me now, because if I get a text message, like just the other day I got one from an employee. She's like, so-and-so is being mean to me. And I'm just, okay, we're not 12. We're all adults. So I copy and paste the text message to Tessa, and I'm, Tessa, please deal with this. And she deals with it. Because I think if I had my point, if I dealt with this on a daily basis, I would have no employees. Because I would show them where the door is, because I don't have the patience for it. And I've raised my kids the exact same way, like, walk it off. Like, we're all adults here. We work with children. You don't miss a day of work because you have a headache. You take some Tylenol, you suck it up. And I don't get any days off. And then I have employees that are half my age, I work double what they work, but they can't work 5 days a week. They can only work 4 days a week, but they want me to pay them for 5 days a week. So, and I don't have the patience for it. So when I hired Tessa, I said, hey, these 2 girls, this is what they want. And she just kind of scoffed, and she's like, yeah, right. It's not going to happen. So, and she laid it on the line for them. Like, here's the deal. Yeah, that's basically, because when we first hired people, it's hard to find child workers. So I'm a pushover when it comes to that. So they came over and I only want to work for 4 days. I want to be paid for 5. Oh, sure, no problem. I'll do that for you because I need the workers. But then when Tessa found out, She approached them and said, hey, guess what? It's not happening anymore. And they're like, well, this is what Becky said. And she's, I don't care. This is exactly what's happening. And if you don't like it, you're more than welcome to go find a job somewhere else. And they both stayed. The one took a pay cut. The one's working 5 days now.